There we go. Now we're back. Yes, we start back. Start over. So the restream system that I use, it kind of double mutes the mic, so it'll tell you it's muted, but then it'll also mute. And then sometimes when it switches to the next scene, it doesn't actually pop up. So now it should be fine. You should be hearing me clearly. So we're just gonna go back to it. Instant coffee. It's not the fancy St. Kitts coffee from last time. Um, I essentially just wanted to have something quick while we, settle into this Tuesday. It's March 24th. As I said, TikTok already heard it, but April is almost here, guys. So, with the hot drink of the day, we're going to get into the hot take of the day. And I was having a conversation with someone and kind of reflecting a bit. Well, they were reflecting to me that they're encountering a lot of people where their behavior is very erratic, like persons that don't normally engage with them suddenly engage with them, or they find like people are very stressed on the road and such, and they felt like how can I fix this. And I think someone's erratic behavior ultimately is not something that you're responsible for. It's something you definitely should pay attention to and note and just be aware of. It could mean, if it's a personal relationship, that they're getting ready for something big that's coming. But your only job at that point is just be prepared for whatever is really coming. And this happens everywhere, I think. And a lot of times in St. Martin, when persons, especially in the public eye, start to act funny, people chalk it up to politics or whatever. But politics, whether in the actual political arena, whether in an office or in an organization, is normally an art, a balance of wants and needs and personalities. And there's normally some genuine mutual respect and a commitment to moving something forward, regardless of personal agendas. But here, I think on St. Martin, too often, whether in government or parliament or regular society, it's become incredibly nasty. Because even in office politics, at some point, the genuine consensus is usually, if the business doesn't make money, we all suffer. So personal agendas get kind of put on the back burner to ensure the survival of the business. But here, I think we've lacked that mentality on St. Martin at the highest level for several decades now. This isn't something that just popped up. Maybe it's gotten a little more concentrated, a little more focused since we became a country, because we don't have Curacao to blame. We don't have Holland to blame. Really, it's really just on us. It continues to fascinate me on this journey as minister, because if at some point you can't set aside your personal agenda, then the business will suffer. And we all suffer when the business, which is Martin, suffers. But we'll see how we continue to do with our mentality as these geopolitical crises keep rocking around us. Um, for the word of the day, if you're just joining me on this vocabulary building journey, of course, we've changed up the word of the day. So we get the word, a fun fact about it, how it's used, and its etymology, meaning where did it come from. And it's brought to you by Merriam Webster. Today's word of the day is actually one of my favorite words, and that's cadence. Cadence is used to refer to various rhythmic or repeated motions, activities, or patterns of sound, or to the way a person's voice changes by gently rising and falling while they're speaking. This is what makes the difference between a voice and a person that you can stand to hear speak and read to you, and a person that you absolutely cannot. Um, so Ivy relaxed at the beach, listening to the cadence of the surf, or he speaks with a soft southern cadence. Because not all southern accents sound like what I think the stereotypical southern accent is. Some of them will actually, charm you right, right as you're listening. Where did it come from? A cadence is a rhythm or a flow of words or music in a sequence that is regular or steady, as it were. You have, cadences in drumming. Bands talk a lot about cadence, how everybody sounds, playing together, playing separately. But cadence also lends its meaning to the sounds of Mother Nature, such as birdsong. It comes from Middle English, borrowed from medieval Latin's own cadentia, a one lovely word that means rhythm in verse. And you may also recognize cadence cousin, sweet cadenza, as a word that is familiar in the opera universe. And from there, our cadence traces just a little further backward to the Latin verb cadere, to sound rhythmically, to fall. So that's the rising and falling of the lilting in our language, whether you're singing songs or rhyming or just opining on it all. Opining is also an interesting word, but I'm not going to get into that to that definition. Game of the month remains Citadellum. Happy to report that I have managed not to kill everyone in my city. We're doing all right. We're a wine producing city in Citadellum. That's one of our main exports. So always important to have something that you're able to export and make money for your city and country to survive. And that takes us into the main updates and topics for today. I want to give a special shout out to Kenny. Kenny, as you know, went viral, I think, in 2024 when he was filmed selling coconuts on the boardwalk, and they interviewed him, and everyone, agreed he was very dynamic. He was very passionate about what he did and such. And I just want to give him a shout out for completing his STCW certification. STCW comes from the International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers. So your boy Kenny is going into the maritime industry, which is an industry that I've spoken very often about that I would love to see more young Samatnas get into. This sets international standards for training and certification of persons on the water. It aims to ensure that all personnel working on ships are adequately trained and competent to perform their duties safely and effectively. I want to thank Kenny for keeping me updated on his journey. This is something that he and I talked about when we met in my office. And very happy that he's managed to get this certification. It opens up a world of possibilities for him, and could open up a world of possibilities for others as well. And in the next live or two lives from now, hopefully I'll have some updates for you on how we've been working on getting more young Samatnas into the maritime industry via the ministry. And second to that, if you're a high school student wondering what do you want to be when you grow up, not only is maritime an option, but I would also urge you to consider project management. Project management also will require its own set of certifications, to get you to where you need to be. But it is something that we desperately need, is a competency that we desperately need on Simatin. So consider it. Moving on to some updates in education. So this week is Money Week. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of visiting the Orania Primary School with Mr. Dwayne President, the CBCS Martin Interim Director. We visited Group 7. We presented the class with a money box with models of the Caribbean Guild notes and coins. We talked about the currency, which is, of course, shared by Saint Martin and Curacao as the monetary union, the central bank of Saint Martin, of Curacao and Saint Martin. We let them touch the money, see the money. They were able to identify most of the animals that they saw on the bills. And I think the most enjoyable part for me was asking them, what is a want, what's a need? And I said, for example, is rent, a want or a need? They said it's a need. Okay. Food, they said that's a need. Someone said groceries, yes. Someone else said internet is also a need. Another student said, what is this? So we had groceries, we had food, GB, so bills, paying bills. And as Mr. President wrote, the different expenses on the board, I said, okay, well, what about a PlayStation 5? And then half the class was like need and half the class was like want. So that's funny. And I said, you also have a differentiation in needs, right? And because I once said that they need a car. You need a car in St. Martin to get around. Okay. I said, but do you need a brand new Mercedes Benz? And they were like, and one said yes, and then another said no. A regular, cheaper car would drive just fine. I said, okay. So it was good for me to see that they're very much aware of, the impact of money, the importance of money. When we were writing out on the board, what would you, divide 1,000 guilders into, whether it's groceries, rent, expenses, other expenses. We asked, what else? And one of them said, savings. A few of them actually shouted out, savings, and I said, that was very good for me to see that they're very cognizant of what is necessary and that they themselves should be saving. And we talked about how much you should save. Then one of them asked us, how much do you have in the bank? But yeah, so it was a very dynamic session with them, and happy and to see that these boxes are going to go to good use. And I think it's good, especially as you see reports from other countries talking about how teachers are going back to manipulatives, so things that students can use and touch with their hands, not relying on screens or videos or anything like that to teach them, these base concepts, because it's also about feeling, feeling the money, being able to handle it. We talked about the security features on the currency, so it was really good to see that they did very well with that, receiving that information. And then I wanted to take a moment to address some of the feedback that I received, both directly and indirectly, regarding the foundation-based education review and report, and some of the comments that I made in the last live stream. And I think the main message that I, want to continue to impart on St. Martin is that knee-jerk reactions, even at this stage, don't help anybody. They're not actually going to solve anything. It's key to note, that the report highlights more than anything else the role of parents and teachers in ensuring children have the best opportunity to learn. You very often, a lot of the burden is placed on teachers, a lot of the burden is placed on government, but there are certain skills that need to be learned in the home even before a child comes to school. Fine motor skills, for example. Um, Children not being able to use their hands for certain things, again going back to using manipulatives and using your hands to be able to learn and to experience your environment. Children learning things like tying their shoes, for example, how to hold knife and fork. I myself will be participating in a very interesting session on Thursday at Hillside Christian School, about these types of motor skills that need to be developed in young kids. So I think that's one important thing to note. I got a lot of comments about doing away with the FBE exam. We know it doesn't work, etc. Um, Doing away with the exam doesn't actually fix anything about the system. It doesn't actually improve how children are learning. The problem is not the exam. The problem is that along the way, they are missing key lessons and key experiences that prevent them from completing that and any exam, to be honest. If you don't test well, and I'm not gonna lie, the FBE exam has been crafted to be a certain level of difficulty. Um, and we've also heard reports that when they get to first form, the level is kind of dropped to compensate. That's not what we want to see. Should want to see that by second, third grade, kids know things that maybe we were not taught when we were younger. And I think just doing away with the exam to appease the frustrations around it, it's another band-aid on a bullet wound. And I'm not interested in continuing that trend. That's how we've operated since time immemorial. And while it will be uncomfortable to not have instant gratification, I reiterate my call that we will all be uncomfortable together. Parents, teachers, school managers, school boards, the departments and divisions in this ministry, society as a whole, is going to have to be uncomfortable together. And I say society as a whole because if I'm going to press on parents the significance of them playing a role in their kids' education, then guess who else I'm pressing? Private sector. Do you, as a business, as a manager, as a supervisor, allow your employees time to go collect report cards, to attend parent teacher meetings? Because that's what I tried my best to do as a manager. That's what I experienced when I was in school. Even the parents working 2, 3 jobs when I was in primary school managed to show up for report card night. Um, so I think I recognized while in private sector that complaining about the quality of worker, which still happens today, that was applying to work for me, and then directly contributing to the continued production of workers like that by hindering parents from being able to be engaged in their kids' education. Yeah, I'm sorry. It will continue to lead to 19-year-olds that cannot spell their address or write a letter. And I think, when I say it takes us all, note that it takes us all. Government is not the village, never has been, never will be. The village is the entirety of all of us. So just to, put a fine dot on that point. So no, I'm not doing away with the exam. We cannot just simply do away with it. I know Curacao did, but Curacao did so after, you guessed it, research and also making decisions following that research. And it didn't happen overnight. Um, so while we work on internally the short-term, mid-term, and long-term recommendations that came out of that report, I think it's important that everyone realize that we're all going to have a role to play in making those recommendations a success. It's not just going to be the ministry. It's going to be everyone. And then to end off, because like I said, it was a very short live stream. Um, I want to start off with Science Week. Well, close off with Science Week actually. And congratulations again to Jacob and Akash, Jacob of Learning Unlimited and Akash Pillai of St. Martin Academy on their second place finish at the OECS Robotics Challenge, which was held in St. Kitts over last week. I actually want to say that they are the second first place winners. Why I say that? Because St. Vincent, which won the overall competition, so came in first, have actually been in this game since I think a little before 2019 or 2019 itself. They've placed top 10 in the world in Dubai at First Global, which is the annual International Robotics Olympics. So the fact that we came in second with, um, that type of competition, it's honestly like one of the proudest moments. And I think Jacob and Akash are just two representatives of SXM Tech Tides, which is going to be our robotics team, and they're going to continue to explore and experiment with robotics, develop their craft, and hone their skills, and hopefully along the way they fall in love with engineering and everything else, and decide to venture into those careers. So it's really, this is what it is when we talk about learning. What also kind of forms what robotics has some influence in its initial form, the FBE system. So yeah, so as we continue to work on the reforms of within education, these are the types of initiatives, these are the types of activities children learn through play. And even though it's robotics, it's a serious competition, it is still play to an effect. And I think that's important to learn, that no matter what age you are, actually you learn better when you're able to touch things, when you're able to manipulate things, when you're able to build a robot, to compete and scoop up balls and put them in boxes, than you are sitting down just staring dead zoned at a blackboard. And Carnival, guys, 6 Thursdays until, is 6 Thursdays? Yeah, last week was 6 Thursdays until Grand Parade. The stress, the pressure is on. I'm looking forward to kind of repeating the oyster soup competition. There will be more on that once I actually press send on this email to the SCDF. But they know it's coming, so I feel confident stating it. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to engage with the community. Really looking forward to my Grand Parade experience again this year. And yeah, generally just being in the village. I think Carnival for us, it remains one of the more special carnivals, that we congregate in the festival village and just have a good time with one another. So hoping that everyone is going to have a safe one. And yeah, Boots, get your oyster soups ready and your Johnny cakes. I was told I need to take questions. So let me see what questions I had, if any. Why are the vacations so short? So vacations are kind of planned in line with school hours. I think I had this conversation once with the division head of public education, and I think the discussion was, if we extend school hours, it kind of adds to summer vacation. But then, do you want to extend school hours? No. So that's a conversation that has to happen within the ministry, and of course with stakeholders in the different schools, to see if this is something that is even possible. But yeah, so the addition of certain holidays, the shifting of school hours, all of that contributes to how vacation time is actually calculated. But Carnival break is coming up, so y'all gonna have a break and then summer vacation, of course. So with that, I don't think there were any other questions. I'm gonna lock off because we've got Council of Ministers meeting today, and then the rest of the day, of course. So wishing everybody a pleasant rest of the week. Um, and this Saturday, I think, is Backyard Jam in Meridian. So I'm looking forward to that too. So yeah, that's gonna be a fun time, and hope to see some of you there. Maybe not all you, but have a good one. Enjoy.